Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the Tamiya Sdkfz 250/3 Greif Buddy Build with Jim Deck at Shutter Ace. As always, let me preface this by saying there will be a link below to Jim's channel so you can check his build of the same exact kit in the same sequence pretty much as me, so you can kind of see and compare how different people do different things. So anyway, let's get on with what's going on here. Okay, so last video, part 5A and 5B, I had to split it up because it got very lengthy, because in those two steps I did all this construction and I did some priming and painting and a little bit of chipping and stuff like that. So I had to split that video up into two pieces or else people would just be, you know, bored stiff. And this is what I ended up with after steps 10 and 11. Inside, primed, hairspray, painted, all the added parts painted, a little bit of weathering. I haven't done this seat yet, but all that's going to come whenever I start doing weathering a little bit later. So as for this video, part 6, I'm going to be doing steps 12, 13, and 14, which is the inside of the upper hull. So I'm basically going to do the same thing. Now, hopefully I can keep it shorter. The other video was an hour and 45 minutes long. That's why I had to split it up. So I may approach this one a little bit differently. I may just do all the assembly stuff, and then the paint, since you've already seen what I did with the other, I may just leave the paint. This is basically going to be the same way. Part 12 here, that's the part that's going to be lengthy. So I think I'll just do the assembly, talk about that, and then I'll do the paint separately, and not video that part so it doesn't get too long. So enough blabbing, let's get cracking. Alright, so I need to cut off a few parts here. I've got B50 and B32 already cut off. B50 goes on the outside, B32 goes on the inside. That's like the armored glass. This is the vision slit here, and you got to pay attention because the vision slit is kind of on one side, so you got to look at your instructions and make sure you got it going the right side. So this the slot is down, so got to make sure that it is like this. And pay attention to the instructions as well, because make sure that you put that on the outside and not the inside that goes on the outside. So let's put that in place here, and let's see if I can do this without getting any fingerprints on it. Okay, got that. Like that. I'm gonna put a little bit more on the inside here. Okay. As you can see, also, I have a different camera setup, and I'll talk about that in a different video. I'm not really going to talk to it on this one, but I will zoom it in a little bit so you can see a little bit better what's going on. Okay, so we put B50 in place first. B32, which is the armored glass, goes on the inside. And let's see. So I'm wondering to see what the... Okay, now this part doesn't really have any locating pins or anything like that. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to go. I mean, it just shows it in here like this. So I'm just gonna wing it. Pretty good at that. When in doubt, wing it. Oh, janky. I missed the part. Okay, so let's see how that sits there. You know what? Okay, that's pretty good. So let me tilt it up a little bit because I think it's supposed to... well, that looks pretty good. Alright, so there's that. Alright, so that's that. So next I'll do B34 and then B74. B34 is right here. Cut that off. Let's see. Oh wow. So there you go. That's pretty jolly. And you know what? Oh no, we're good. We're good. A little bit of a flash line, like it's the mold seam line around the edge there. Need to get that kind of cleaned up. And let's see. Need a little bit of sanding on the end there. Oh yeah, splendid. A little bit there. Now this is stuff you're really not even going to be able to see inside of here because of where it is. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to see it, but it's no excuse to be shoddy. Now, there is, okay, this goes like this. Now, I will make note that there are some ejector pin marks in here. Hopefully one right there, hopefully you can see it, but it faces out, and that is going to have an armored cover, or like a vision slit kind of thing, over top of that. So if you wanted to model those open, it might be a problem, but I am not going to model it open, therefore it shan't be a problem. So we got to make sure there's a little bit of flash right here. Let's take care of that. And that goes right whoops. Okay, let's see. We're like that and like that. So that goes there. There we go. That's where it goes. Gotta watch these things, they can be tricky. That didn't look right. Yeah, it doesn't really line up on the outside, but that's the only way it fits in there. So, put a little bit of cement there. And a little bit there. Okay, so that is that one. So I'm going to do the other one and the other side like this off camera to save a little bit of camera time. If there's anything weird, I'll be sure and say something about it. Okay, so I got all of the vision stuff through. So the next thing I want to cut off or do, I'm going to do this B26, B27, which is the rifle rack. And I think I'll be able to put the rifles in after the fact, so I can paint those separately. So we need parts B26 and 27, which is this and this. Let's get those cleaned up. Now there is a hideous ejector pin mark in the inside of it, but that's no big deal because the rifle butts are going to be in there, and you'd be hard pressed to see it anyway. But I am going to sand these edges down because they're kind of uneven and flared out looking from the molding process. It's one of those things about older kits. Sometimes the parts are not really square as they should be, just because the molding process back then didn't allow it. I'm guessing that's the reason why it was like that. Educated guess, I guess you could say. Okay, so we got that. So let's shave the little burr off here. Like that. All right, so this has a pin right there, and it fits in that hole, and the back of this butts up against that plate there. So that's how that goes, just like that. So let's put a little cement right there like that, and then make sure it's affixed firmly in place like that. Oh yeah, perfect. Oh, that's beautiful. That's stellar. Okay, there's a little bit of flash right there. Let's get that off. Then we can clean this up here like that, and the same thing, run the sander on it. This might be kind of hard to see because of my big knuckles, but whoa. Okay, so then this is a little bit smaller, so I'm going to use some tweezers. It also has a little, it's not really a pin, it's more like an angled bump, so you can put it in place like that. So this is what I'm going to do here. Put a little bit of this there. Now it is angled on that one side, looks like for a reason. So it fits and makes it kind of perpendicular. Okay, so we got that. All right, so those are in place. Again, the rifles I'll do later. So we got B29 and B28, or B28 and 29, depending on how you like to count. Let's cut those off, get those cleaned up. Which is a flare gun. And I'm assuming a flare gun, flare canister or some such. Now there's an open end and a close end. You want the open end facing upwards when you have this upside down. So we'll put that right on there like that. I'm going to turn around because you don't want to see that hole in the bottom of that box from above. Okay, so let's position that snug up against that pin thing. Then you got the little flare pistol. Now the flare pistol, I'm going to clean the top of it because this barrel right here has a pretty visible seam line. So let's get that cleaned up. All right, and then there's a very teeny tiny pin and a hole right there. So we will take this and test fit it first. Like that. And then we'll put the cement from underneath like that. Viola. Okay, so there's that. So that pretty much takes care of all this. So now we're supposed to flip it this direction. I already installed that, as I said. I need to install this B47 C21. So let's get B47, which is right there. That cleaned up. And this one, this part faces up and goes right there. Like that. Okay, then let's get this C21. Which looks like a piece of canvas. And, oh shoot, a piece of canvas with a leather like seat back on it. So this is supposed to be buff, and this is supposed to be leather colored, red brown it says. And it fits like this. So it looks like it fits on that edge. Yeah. See, there's a raised ridge right there. So that fits right there like that. So I want to make sure it fits really flush. Looks pretty good. Looks like it could use a little bit of trimming right here. It's got a little bit of a bump right there. So now it fits nice and smooth. So I need to glue that, hopefully without getting any fingerprints. So let's see. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me get mine a little bit thicker. Not much thicker, but my Tamiya extra thin non quick setting. And Now this would actually be a good time to be using my tester cement. The tester's liquid because it's a little bit slower setting, but that's okay. That's on there pretty good. Hold that in position for a second. Alright, so while that's drying, I'm going to cut out the radio, B37 and 35. B37 and 35. And get the seam line, some old seam line taken care of. Alright, that's cleaned up, so now I need to glue this on here like that. So it actually fits in there pretty snugly, so let's see if I can get it into position there. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's a little bit of something right there. Oh yeah. Oh man, it was in there and I dropped it. Oh crikey. All this faffing about, taking up precious video time. Okay, so let's put a little bit of cement right there and get that pushed in place. Oh man. Boy, this one's tough. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's better. Okay, and a little dab of glue here. Ta-da! Okay, so that's done, and that goes where? Okay, that goes up here. So this goes on this side right there. So let's get it kind of positioned here. A little bit of the old cemento, like that. There we go. So there's that. And then I need to cut off parts B36 and B31. On this part, there's a little tab there and a notch there, so you want to make sure you get that positioned accordingly. Looks pretty good, and it should be easy to paint this because we got plenty of room to get a brush in there to paint it and do the weathering and stuff, so that shouldn't be an issue. And then this little part here, which looks like even more extra armored glass for the vision slits and stuff. So that goes right there. Well, that's going to be way underneath there. That's going to be really difficult to see, but it's there. Just make sure that's pressed into place like that. Whoops. And make sure it's pressed into place like that. All right. So, with the exception of the rifles, that takes care of step number 12. Okay, so I've got all of the parts taken care of, glued in the inside of this. So, as I said on my, at the beginning, I'm not going to show the painting aspect of this. I need to paint the inside of this before I can glue it to this. If you want to see how I handle the painting, watch my previous video. Part 5B, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. I'm going to be doing primer, paint, detail painting, a little bit of scuffing and chipping. Not as much though, because it's in areas that aren't going to be seen. It's mainly going to be detail painting. So I'm going to get cracking on that. Once I get done with that, we'll come back and join these two parts together. Okay, so I've got the inside done. I've got the dash controls done. I've got the radio or whatever that is done. The rifles are in place. This cushiony thing here and this tarp or whatever it is, those are done. I did the same thing on this one as I did on the other one. I used the burnt umber and tried to give it a worn look. And then I also did using let's see, where is it? The Untitled dark mud. I made a really thin wash and put that on this canvas part or whatever it is, so it wouldn't be so monotone. So that's done. So the next thing I could do, and I cleaned up all the paint off the edges, you know, overspray and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm ready to glue this together. Now, one thing to note, I looked online to check. Now, this hangs over, the upper hangs over just ever so slightly. Seems like especially in here. Now this doesn't hang over that much, but if it does, it's not to worry, because that is the way it's supposed to be. In looking at some walk around photos of 250s, Sdkfz 250s, they have an overhang. And then here, here, and here are some weld seams. So I'll do those once I get everything all glued together. But this right now is ready to glue together. So let me get my stuff ready here, and we can do that. So I want to make sure that whenever it's glued together, there's no seams, you know, that you can see through. But I am not going to worry about the overhang, because that's the way it's supposed to be. So I'm going to start up here and work my way back and try and get it cemented as good as possible. So we'll start right here, drop a bead down through there like that. I don't want to do a really, I don't really want to squish it, because I don't want it to come oozing out the sides, because I want to keep that sharp edge. So I'm going to do this side first, and then I'll come over here and do this side. My main concerns are going to be making sure there's no visible seam there. Alright, so back here, I'm not going to worry about it as much because I do want that to stick together good, because I am going to add a weld seam there. So I'm going to put some of this right there and let it seep in through that hole. That whole seam right there, like that. Alright, so that side's dry, so now I can start on this side. Same thing. Okay, before I go on to 13 and start gluing all these parts on, I need to do a little bit of work on some weld seams. So where there are weld seams on this thing, according to online references, there's welds here, all down this edge here, across here, and then on both sides here, here, and here. So I need to do some weld seams. So I'm also going to have to, like this weld seam obviously is going to be right here. This one is on the side here all the way down, and on the side here. So like this is one plate that's been welded on there. And then this one, it looks like the weld seam is along the edge here. I think this one's here. I'll have to double check my references. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Another thing I'm going to do, I was looking at this and I'm thinking this is like ultra soft, and it is, detail around this door. But one thing I noticed is this access hatch or door, whatever it is, the edges are tapered like these are. So like the door isn't like just totally flat. It has kind of a bevel on the bottom or around the edges. So you have the surface of the door and then a bevel down to the surface. So I think I'm going to get a template and try and score just along this lower edge here, just to give it some definition, so whenever I do some weathering it'll look a little bit sharper. Here's what I've come up with. Got some of my Tamiya tape, put it along the lower edge here, and I'm just using the back side of my knife, my X-Acto knife, to come around like this. So I'll do the same thing all the way around on both sides, and it should give me, you can't really see it, but once, it's very fine, but once I start doing some weathering on it, it should make it pop pretty good, hopefully. I was going to try and freehand it, but I don't think I'd be steady enough without totally skipping off and going some weird direction and messing it all up. So that's one of the drawbacks of some older kits. They just don't have the sharp, definition on some of the detail. It's what's commonly referred to as soft detail. So anyway, I'm going to work on that a little bit. To get the corners, I use this pin vise with this sharp object in it, so that worked pretty good. And I'll just use a little bit of cement to take care of the burrs. And hopefully whenever I do the weathering, it'll look right. Okay, for the weld seams I'm going to do on this front plate, they are in front right here on this edge, right along here, and they're on the outside edge here. So it's like this plate is one big piece with this part welded in, hence the weld there. This is a piece welded on top, hence the weld there. This one will go here, this one will go here. So let me get this taped off and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, as you can see, I've got everything all taped off. So what I need to do is I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer 500 because it's thicker. I'm going to use one of these little applicator brushes. Hopefully it'll work. Basically, I'm going to dip some in there like that, and then just dab it on the spot in between where I've got it taped off. It'll look all rough and clumpy looking, and that's okay because it'll level out a bit. You just want it to be kind of a uniform thickness. Okay, like that. And then I'm going to work in sections because I don't want to get too much because it'll cure differently in the different spots. If I'm not careful. Okay, so I've got that, so I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do this other side here. And just pay attention to references as to where the weld seams are, where they start, where they end, that kind of thing. This one only goes to there because there's going to be like a rain gutter kind of thing over the door. And you don't want to... I'll just do the whole back here to demonstrate, and I'll do the rest off camera. And the reason I think I said it, but the reason I'm using the 500 is because it is thicker and it'll hold its shape a little bit better. I have some 1000. I also have some Tamiya surface primer. Those are too thin. They wouldn't work. You could probably use, now that I think about it, you could probably use Sprue glue. You just might risk your tape getting stuck. As you can see, this stuff's quite thick. I don't know if it's thickened over time or if this is the way it always has been. I've had this jar for a while, so I don't really remember. Okay, so there's that. So I'm gonna let it sit there for a second. So now I'm just gonna use this end of this skewer here. You can sharpen a toothpick, do anything, and I'm just gonna mash some weld marks in there. whoops, and I hope that it looks good. I could have went a little bit thicker on that one. Now, like always, there's other ways. Yeah, I'm gonna need some more right there. There's other ways to do this, but this, see, it's not thick enough, so I need to put some more in there. There's other ways to do this. This is the way I do it. I've done it before, and it works pretty good. Need to have enough goop in there that it will. Let that sit for a second. Let's go over here. If it's not perfect, don't worry, because you can tone it down. I need to work with smaller areas. This is drying up too quick. Cleaning that off every once in a while. So that's what you have. So before it dries up too much, you need to pull the tape off. This isn't the best thing to do it with. It's kind of soft. I've used it before, but it doesn't seem to be working that great right now. Stir this up a little bit. It starts to get like a glaze over the top. There you go, some weld some weld marks. You can use your knife to trim them straight if you need to, if you get some weird looking things. But just adds a little bit of texture to make it look like it's a weld instead of just smooth stuff. You can also use your cement and run over it, or some lacquer thinner, just to clean it up a little bit. If it's too thick in spots, you can sand it down once it dries. So there we go. That looks okay. That'll work. So now I got to do the rest of this, but I think I'm going to use a different brush. That little round thing wasn't doing that great. It was kind of gooping up. I also might need to thin it a little bit, just a little bit. So let's see what we can do here. So I've got some lacquer thinner here, some trashy stuff, small brush. So let's see what we can do. Let's get some of this out. Put it on here. Like that. And let's add just a little, whoops. Put the cap on first. Add just a little bit of lacquer thinner. Don't want to get it too thin. We'll use that little stick here to kind of that seems a little bit better. Not a very scientific approach to measuring, but looks pretty good, so we'll try that. I think my other one was a little too thick. Might be able to put a little bit more uniformly with this brush. Like that. Let's do these two little short sections here. Yeah, it's working a little bit better. Okay, like that. You know, I also need to do that right there, and I totally forgot. So I'll tape that off later and do that. So let's let that dry for a minute. All right, and then once all of it dries, just lightly sand it down, just to make it not quite so sharp and stark looking. Because the weld, in looking at the welds on these things, I don't know if it's because it was earlier in the war, and this is pure conjecture on my part because I'm no kind of historical expert on this kind of stuff, but the welds looked pretty decent. You know, they weren't like real chunky looking or anything, and they were somewhat smoothish. So that's just to give it a little bit of texture and look like, you know, it's not just a molded thing going on. One could even, you know, it's funny, this is the next morning from when I did this because I wanted to let it dry really good. Last night I was not thinking it was looking very good at all. I wasn't digging it. But now, in looking at it again, it looks a lot better. So don't get frustrated whenever you're doing stuff like this and it may not look right at first, because later it may look just fine. I'm digging that. Looks pretty good. So now I can start gluing some of these external parts on in step 13 here. So the first part I'm going to do I think I'm going to go ahead and do B24, which goes on the front, and B55. So let's cut those off and get those cleaned up like that. So this part goes underneath here like that. Now it's kind of got a weird little bit of angle on it because of the molding process. So I'm going to kind of flatten that out, make it more 90 degrees. So it'll sit flat because it's supposed to be 90 degrees to that underside. So we'll get that like that, and that goes there. So let's get the old handy dandy glue out. Now one thing I gotta remember to do, and I just was thinking about it and I almost forgot, is I need to, whoa, send that flying. That's what I need to do. Oh, shnikes. Okay, let me get that glue good. Is I need to do that weld bead across the front under the visor part of the driver's compartment. Right along in there. So I need to make sure I do that. So I'm going to let this dry right there. And yeah, I got to do that weld bead. Now that might actually be a good place to do something different. Like maybe some stretched sprue. Some stretched sprue. Or some epoxy putty type stuff. So let's see what I can do about some stretch sprue. All right, so in case you don't know what stretch sprue is, just what it says. You take a heat source, in this case a lighter, with a crest of my grandfather's regiment, the 417th Infantry Regiment in World War II. Pretty cool, eh? And just get some fire going. Wow, that's a big flame. And then just kind of heat a piece of sprue without burning your fingers until it gets soft. And then just stretch it out like that. And then extinguish the fire. Put your lighter back and you have a nice piece of sprue there. And what you can do is you can stretch it to any thinness or thickness you want. Now, I'm wondering if that might be too big. Yeah, it might be all right. And then just cut it to length. I think I might stretch this just a little bit more. All right, on second look, I think that'll be fine. So I'm going to cut it to length here. Like that. And, you know, I think if a person wanted to, they could just scrape some of it down to make it a little bit thinner. Like that. Then simply take it, and I'm going to put the flat side up, put it in place there. I'm going to trim just a little tiny bit more off. what I'm going to do is I don't want to touch it because I don't want, I'll get it tacked down in the middle there. Use my tweezers. That way I don't get a big fingerprint on it. Yeah, that'll good. That's good. Using capillary action, just let it fill in behind there. Make sure it's totally pressed into the corner. Nice and snug. And then I'm going to let that set up pretty good so it's nice and squished into place. Then I'm going to use a different cement to actually do what I'm wanting to do. And I'll show you why. Okay, so we'll let that set up. And while that's setting up, we can go ahead and do some other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off 2 of these B52s. What? B52. And glue those in place here. And here. Make sure those are trimmed up and looking neat. Thusly. And then put those there. Like that. Stellar. Then we'll put this one over here. And that. And that. Make sure it's pressed into place there. So there's that. Let's go ahead and glue this front plate on here. One side at a time. And then this plate down here needs to be glued up against that, but we'll do that after this sets up. Alright, I've got all that glued around there, so now I'll glue this bottom part right here. Like that. Okay, so here's what I'm doing on this. For this weld seam, I've got some tweezers here that have a nice small round blunt end, and all I'm doing is I'm taking some not the quick setting Tamiya extra thin, but just the regular, because it evaporates a little bit slower. And then I'm just gonna soak a short part like that, let the cement do its thing as far as softening the plastic. Then I'm going to take this and just mash the dissolved plastic in like that. Just do it in little short increments like that, and make a weld bead. And A little bit of thinner might have been better for this, but it'll be okay. It'll just take a little bit more work. But just do that all the way down. Just do it in little short bits, you know, that way your cement doesn't evaporate too quickly. And just work your way down and you'll have a nice weld bead there. All right, so there it is. Got that weld bead across there. And it looks pretty good. Actually looks really good. It's a little bit thicker than the other ones, but that's all right. It turned out okay. Oh, I'm stoked. All right, so that is done. So let's go ahead and start gluing some more of these parts now. This is all glued on the front. I got B52 done. So I'm going to cut all these little parts off here and get those ready to glue on. Okay, so I've got all these parts cut off. However, in the way it works, one of these has disappeared into the carpet underneath my feet. And I looked for a while, couldn't find it, so done looking. So what I'm doing is I'm fabricating one of these out of bits of sprue. And what I'm using, or styrene I should say, evergreen strip styrene is what I'm using. So I built it in components. So as you can see here, hopefully, let's see if I can do this where I can show you. You've got this little part here with a little lip on it that hooks over the top of this lip right here. Then you have this part here that comes down, and then this part here that has a little dimple in it for the antenna, the framework antenna that goes over the top of the vehicle. So what I did is I duplicated each of those three components here. This is the part here, and it's got, I fabricated a little lip. This here is the part that comes down, and then this part here is the part with the little dimple. You might not be able to see it, but there's a dimple right there I did with one of my pin vices and drill bit. So I'm not going to try and assemble this on camera because I won't be able to do it. So I'm going to assemble it right here and then come back. All right, and there it is. So this is what it is supposed to look like. And that's what it looks like. So not perfect, but pretty stinking close. It'll work. And once I get, once I get this part smoothed out to match the angle of this, then it'll be fine. I just want to let it dry really good first. But in the meantime, I can glue these parts on here. And I'm telling you, it couldn't have been a worse color to drop on my carpet because my carpet's got a lot of this color in it. This Tamiya yellow color. It's just heinous, let me tell you. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. It happens, and I guarantee I'll drop a part on my next kit, whatever that might be, and I'll find this part. That's what happened last time. Looking for a part for a model I was working on, and I found one I dropped from the previous project. Funny how that works. But, you know, what are you gonna do? I guess it's better to have the carpet monster eating plastic than eating my feet. Alright, so I'm going to wait to glue. This one goes right here. I'm going to wait to glue that one until I get that fixed so I have room to work. But in the meantime, I can glue this. need to get some of that paint off. Okay, I got that cleaned off, so now I can glue it into place. Oh, beautiful. All right, so let's see if I can get this trimmed up. Fortunately, this evergreen styrene is pretty soft, so it's real easy to cut. Oh yeah, it's looking good. See, that's what I gotta watch out for. That part moving, but that's why I did it in pieces, so it'd be easier to deal with. I think I'm gonna use a sanding stick on here. There we go. All right, so I'm good with that. So now I'll put this one here. Just for like a stick antenna. Like that. Okay, then the next part, the only part left on step 13 is to glue these tools into place. So I'm going to clean those up. Alright, so I got the tools cleaned up. Time to glue them in place. Hopefully I won't get a fingerprint on here. So there's that. And hopefully this, if I can get it to stick. There we go. And then I'll get this end here. They have very, very tiny pins on the side, locating pins. So it's kind of hard to fit it on there. All right, so that takes care of step 13. So the last step is construction of tools. So this tripod and toolbox. So toolbox is B22 and B9. There's B22 and 9. And the other parts are on the C sprue. Ooh, don't want to cut that off. That would be the latch. Make sure these edges are nice and flush. Get the mold seam off of there. So my children got me a gift card Father's Day, which was yesterday. But by the time you see this, is going to be way down the road. But came just in time because I was getting ready to order a paint set for the uniforms for these guys. So I was able to order it that way. It's pretty stoked. It's an AK set, so we'll see how well it works. But I need something for the Africa Corps uniforms. Okay, so let's see how this goes. Alright, so we got, this goes up here. And this fits like this. So let me make sure these burrs are off of here from sanding. And then we got to make sure this is nice and flat here. Whoops. Okay, that should be pretty good. And this fits here like this. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Perfect fit. Oh, that's lovely. All right, so a little cement here, a little cement there. Whoa. And flip it over. I'm going to put a little bit of cement from the inside. Oh, like that. And that's a lot of cement. Alright, so we'll let that dry. So now let me cut off the 3 C17s and the C16. Okay, so now I got all this stuff cleaned up, at least as good as I can see, because it's really hard to see the mold seams on these things, but it should be alright. So I'm going to glue this part together. Now this part here actually goes on top of something on the fender, so I'm just going to glue these in place best I can, and then I may have to adjust it once I get it on the part, and that shouldn't be too hard. All I'll need to do is just hit these joints with cement so it'll kind of relax into place, if that makes sense. Because these legs, or the legs of the tripod, are supposed to kind of come together like that. But again, it's going to depend on how it lays on that part. I think I'll do like, yeah, it won't be very hard to adjust them. But I do want to at least get them put together. Like that. Perfect. Well, it's near perfect so you can get. So there we go. So that takes care of step 14. All right. So at the conclusions of steps 12, 13, and 14, that ends part 6 of this series. So next time we come back, we'll be working on the fenders and attaching those. So 15, 16, and 17 are the next steps. So that is that. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the Tamiya 1/35 scale 250/3 Greif buddy build with Jim at Shutter Ace. So don't forget to click in the link below and check out his channel and see how he's coming along and working on the same steps that I am. So until next time, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, hints, tips, etc., put them in the comment section down below, and I will see you all later.